Let's get to 5 Vols to watch against the Aggies, and we'll get to 5 Aggies to watch against Tennessee. But let's start out with the 5 Aggies to watch for Tennessee, if we can. Caleb Calhoun. This is a roster that is probably more talented than Tennessee. As a matter of fact, I was looking at the positions, and other than running back, if you go running back versus running back, linebacker versus linebacker, and down the line, I'm not talking about running back against the opposing defense, but I think the only set that you would argue that Tennessee has more talent at and is better is running back and perhaps quarterback, with Nico sitting on the bench right now. But other than that, it's kind of difficult to make an argument that Tennessee is better at a particular personnel grouping and overall better than what Jimbo Fisher has done. Is he a great head coach? Probably not, but he has recruited at a high level because Texas A&M has more money than Warren Buffett. So, Caleb, your thoughts on 5 Aggies to watch. Let's break them down if you want to start at number 5, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, let's talk about the genius of Fisher to get this great roster together. Remember, he went 4-8 last year, which is what allowed him to recruit, so he could get the better talent because he sold playing time. He said that. I'm going to keep reminding you guys that Jimbo Fisher literally said losing was good because it helps on the recruiting trail. So,
yeah, and I mean, it is true. You just don't say it. I mean, a lot of times,
it's
and
not
you can
true.
lose.
You don't want
to. It is, and it's not. If you're an established program and you have a good culture and you slip up one year, let's take Tennessee in 2021. Now, that was Heupel's first year. I think he had established somewhat of a culture. It wasn't bad to lose at that point because you would go to recruits and say, look, you can play right away. We got a good culture and we got all this support. You're right. With Jimbo Fisher, I thought it was stupid. And as a whole, losing is bad for recruiting. I got his point, but you don't say it publicly.
Fair enough.
I know that's a bit of a reach, but
I think in Fisher's situation was more like 2005 Tennessee's situation. That did not help Tennessee in recruiting whatsoever. And
no.
So,
agreed. So let's take a look at some of these Aggies that people need to know about. You start with Damani Richardson, defensive back, and tell me why he's important. Then you got Max Johnson, who just has the most unbelievably terrible name in the history of man. But anyway, he's at number 4. Give me a breakdown of those two guys. And obviously Johnson is important, but why Richardson?
Okay, so Damani Richardson was a preseason All-SEC safety. He had a slow start to the year, didn't really rack up a lot of stats. In safety, you can judge sometimes by stats with safeties, particularly, not as much cornerbacks. He's a hard-hitting safety. Finally kind of came through last week where he did force a key fumble on Jermaine Burton at one point. He's third on the team in tackles with 20. Given the issues with Joe Milton, you can expect him to try to take advantage of some of those if he's there. I mean, I think both of Joe Milton's interceptions last week were to safeties. I think all 3 this year have been to safeties. So just watch out for him.
I think you're right. Aeneas Smith, no relation to Aeneas Williams.
Oh, we don't want to talk about Max Johnson first?
Oh, Max Johnson, yeah, quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. He's the quarterback. I see NFL talent in Max Johnson as a drop-back passer. I do. His only issue, and John brought it up yesterday, John Adams did, is right now he's on like a 4-second clock, I would say. And in the NFL, you need a 3-second clock, 3 seconds and get rid of the ball. And I don't think he's on that clock yet, which does play into Tennessee's favor with the pressure they bring. So.
I watched one of those This Day in Sports History things, and it was from 1999 when Peyton Manning and Dan Marino went against one another. And I think that era is over. So unless you're special like Marino or Manning from the pocket, I think you have to be able to run. So I would have agreed with you 10 years ago that Max Johnson's an NFL quarterback. I don't think that's the case because he doesn't have great mobility. My thoughts.
I think the early part of this NFL season is tainting your judgment because Joe Burrow doesn't have great mobility, and I still think he's going to be elite. And Matthew Stafford just won a Super Bowl 2 years ago.
See, to me, Joe Burrow does have good mobility. Maybe
you're a drop back.
Maybe that's where we differ.
Okay.
I think the kid at for the Chargers too. His name escapes me.
Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think he has great mobility. I think Josh Allen has great mobility.
What about Brock Purdy?
Pretty good. I would say going back to Burrow, I would say that he is, to your point, probably the least mobile of the great quarterbacks right now playing the game, right?
Yeah, the least mobile, and I think by next year he'll be the second best quarterback in the NFL, only to Patrick Mahomes. So I think when he gets fully healthy, I would take Joe Burrow over everybody but Patrick Mahomes in the NFL right now.
But my argument is Max Johnson that special? Is he Burrow special?
No, and that's a good point. I guess your point with pocket passers is pocket passers have to be very special as passers.
Yes.
And that's where I will give you that, because I remember back in the day, and that's been the thing, that's been an issue for about 10 years now. And I remember the biggest standout to me was in 2011, LSU fans. Remember when they lost the rematch to Alabama in the national title game, and they got mad at Les Miles for leaving Jordan Jefferson in the whole time and not putting in Jarrett Lee? And I said, Jarrett Lee could, like, he wasn't mobile enough. He kept getting blitzed. And I remember debating somebody saying, well, Peyton Manning's not mobile. I'm like, yeah, but Jarrett Lee's not Peyton Manning. Okay. So
right.
Like,
I don't think you're going to have another Trent Dilfer hold on to a job for a decade. And I don't think you're going to have another Trent Dilfer win a Super Bowl, no matter how good the defense is. That would be my point. So Aeneas Smith, wide receiver for the Aggies, certainly need to keep an eye on him. 26 catches, 431 yards. He's off to a great start.
Yes, and Evan Stewart seems like the primary receiver with 27 catches for 403 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Tennessee will have to worry about him, but Aeneas Smith actually has 26 catches for 431 yards. With quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers, Dave, I'm sorry, touchdowns is the most overrated stat in the sport. Okay, I care more about the yards than the touchdowns, honestly. And Aeneas Smith is getting the yards. And also, Aeneas Smith has run back a punt for a touchdown, and he's averaging 17.5 yards per punt return on 15 returns. That's an incredible number right there.
Okay. I'm gonna address this one time. Orange Blood says, Dave, look back at the entire history of Super Bowl winning and losing quarterbacks. Tell me how many were mobile. Look back at the past 5 years. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is extremely mobile. Jalen Hurts was playing for the Super Bowl. I think this is a change over the past 3 or 4 or 5 years.
But they have a point, though. The past 5 years, Dave, Tom Brady's won 2 and Matthew Stafford's won 1.
Again, Tom Brady's special, though.
Is Matthew Stafford special?
Your column's too good to get caught up on this topic. Here we go. Okay, Edgerrin Cooper, no relation to Edgerrin James. Linebacker, very important before we get to a local guy done good in the SEC. Tell me about Edgerrin Cooper and why he is so important coming off the edge.
Yeah, he's a linebacker that at Texas A&M's run defense is elite, and it's because of him. He's got 41 solo tackles, 12 tackles for a loss, and 6 sacks. Take 12 tackles for a loss through 6 games. That's an insane stat line, isn't it? That's ridiculous.
Yes.
And so is 6 sacks through this point. He's been all over the field, and Tennessee is going to have to account for him at all times. This is not a matchup thing. It's just he's that good. You have to account for him. It's not like, oh, Tennessee is going to play this way, and that's going to think Edgerrin. No. Edgerrin Cooper's just that good, so that's why.
Nope. Completely agree. And let's go to 5 balls that.
Wait, number 1?
Oh, number 1, Walter Nolan. I thought you just mentioned him. Walter Nolan. He also, like me, has his PhD, Powell High diploma. I don't know if he went through 3 years of PMS, Powell Middle School, to get it. He didn't.
He transferred to Knoxville his last year.
I know. But it's still, for the sake of the joke. He didn't go through 3 years of PMS, Powell Middle School. But certainly he is one of the best defensive linemen in the SEC, if not the nation.
7 tackles for a loss, 4 sacks this year as a defensive tackle. He's in blowing up every play. He balled out last week. Again, Tennessee has not been tested. Tennessee's run game has not been tested like they'll be tested this week, and Walter Nolan will be the reason for that. And there's a guy on the other side when we get to the 5 Vols who I think this is going to be the matchup to watch on Saturday.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get to the Vols on that side of it. 5 Vols to watch. You can check that out on offthehooksports.com. And you've got number 5, Joe Milton. So that'll lead us to 4 Downs. 4 Downs brought to you by friends at Herald Group Security Solutions. I'll tell you more about them. 4 Downs is now. And Cooper, what should people do? Oh, Cooper, say it again.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Yes, hit like and subscribe. Do us a favor, tell a friend, support our sponsors, and they're the reason we're here, and we greatly appreciate you and your support of the program. You've got Joe Milton III, Esquire Senior Jr. at number 5. I could make a strong argument that he should be number 1. In fact, I'm going to do that right now as we get to 4 downs, breaking down the Vols that you need to keep an eye on this week.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So this is for the message board. Caleb, you're not allowed to answer this because it's about you, okay?
Okay.
All right. The message board, first down is, do I have the downs correct? Let me know there, Coop.
Coop here. First down.
Thank you. All right. For the message board is Caleb Calhoun crazy for having Joe Milton number 5. He should be number 1 on this list each and every week. Is he crazy on the message board? Tell me. All right, Caleb, why is Joe Milton the 3rd, number 5?
Joe Milton's the 3rd, number 5. It's crazy. Look, y'all are lucky he's even on this list. And the only reason I have him on this list is because of what Jalen Milroe did last week. And I'm like, oh, okay, mediocre quarterbacks can beat Alabama through the air. I mean, Alabama, listen to me, Texas A&M through the air. So this is Joe Milton's game where he's got to ball out. But Joe Milton was a complete non-factor in Tennessee beating South Carolina. The biggest non-factor I think I've ever seen. I think you brought up, you could have had Trent Dilfer at 45 years old lineup against South Carolina, and they just run the ball and beat him. Tennessee, Joe Milton has been utterly useless in anything past the line of scrimmage on passes this year so far. And anybody could throw those screens he runs. So, yeah, no, I think that Tennessee, weirdly, in a Josh Heupel offense, it can't be overstated. They're finding ways to win in spite of their quarterback.
So you're basically calling him a game manager.
Yes. That South Carolina game completely changed every thought I had on Joe Milton. He's nothing more than a game manager.
You know, that's completely insane. I haven't thought of those 2 words, but now that you say it, I can't. I have no argument against that. And I can usually manufacture an argument against anything. But the question was specifically, is Caleb crazy? Elias says number 1 has to be Milton unless you want A&M to pin their ears back against the run. 100% has to be. And I have no idea what this means. But Travis says crazy as a poop house rat. You have any idea what that means?
No idea what the heck that is. I love Southern phrases that just things that don't make sense when they compare stuff. You're like, what?
All right, Coop, what down?
Cooper Mays here. 2nd down.
You got Cooper Mays at number 4. He's the most important player on this team. That proved true in Gainesville and proved true against South Carolina and the opposite ends of the spectrum in which they played. He should be number 1. Should Coop be number 1?
Should everybody be number 1, Dave? You said
Yes.
Joe Milton should be number 1 and Cooper Mays should be number 1. And who else should be number 1?
I do a 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E.
Hence the reason 1 through 5.
Okay, legitimately, though, I would have Cooper number 1. I gave you a hard time about Joe Milton, but I legitimately would have Cooper number 1 on this list, which would make it boring, and I don't want you to do this, but he would be number 1 on this list for the remainder of the season. By the way, the Vol Report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning drops later this afternoon. Coop, number 4. Why not higher?
You're acting like when I name these people, I'm disrespecting them. These are the 5 important players. They are the keys to the game, okay?
Sure.
And then you put me in a position to say why they're not keys to the game. Like, the whole point of this list is that they are keys to the game. Okay, so Cooper's crucial. The matchup of the game is Cooper Mays versus Walter Nolan. That is the matchup that will determine the outcome of this game. Who wins that matchup in their interest? The most important matchup. Cooper and Joe being on this list, I'm not going to say why they're too low with regards to them. What I will do is talk about the other players and say why they're higher. Because all these players are important. So you're not going to get me to say why Cooper shouldn't be higher.
All right. Our Travis says Coop should be number 2. I would assume that would be behind Joe Milton. So he agrees with me, I think. Coop, speaking of, what down are we on?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
All right. Looking at your list, you have Squirrel White, who plays slot receiver. Josh Heupel pretty much came out and said Dante Thornton cannot play outside. He didn't really say that, but they released the depth chart, and you had Webb and Nimrod above him at the outside position. The guy's only learned one position, which may be by design, but he hasn't done a lot. You've called him out. You've got Squirrel White, who will keep him on the bench as the number 3 most important player. My question on are we on third down? My question on third down is Dante Thornton dead to you, Caleb Calhoun?
I mean, he effectively is. I have not seen a lazier player on the field since I've been covering Tennessee or any sport. I've not seen a player just genuinely not care to fight for balls at receiver. You would think for your draft stock alone, you would want to do that, right? But I have seen a complete lack of care from Dante Thornton. And I'm going to keep saying it until I actually see him do it on the field. He shouldn't see the field with Squirrel White, because Squirrel White fights for every ball that goes up, by the way. And so there's 2 under 6 feet receivers that have torched A&M already. Everybody talked about Jermaine Burton last week, but actually Isaiah Bond had 96 yards with the score, and Xavier Restrepo of Miami went for 126 yards, both smaller, speedy receivers. And this is why I had Squirrel White above Cooper and Joe Milton, because Squirrel White actually has to ball out in this game. Cooper is crucial, but Cooper can't do it alone. You need the left guard and you need the right guard to step up, don't you? Otherwise, Cooper, what he can do is irrelevant.
Yeah, but I think he gets him in the right position.
He does, but they actually have to play it. I don't know if anybody can play left guard for Tennessee right now. But
did I share this with you, what somebody told me about Dante Thornton within Tennessee's program? Said he's just very young. And I don't think they meant age, because despite what COVID says, you're in your 18 to 22, 23-year-old position. And he's, I think, 21, I believe. You might want to check that for me. I think they meant physically and maturity-wise. Very young. That's what that meant.
I mean, look, I'll be honest. I was a late developer in terms of being dedicated to my craft and what I did. I wasn't as dedicated as I should have been when I was in college, and I regret it to this day. And maybe that's a thing with Dante Thornton. But
I was too. I mean, I wasn't a mature person until I was probably 22 or 24. I'm not. I mean,
yeah. So like when you're playing receiver, I think that can come back. Look, when you're playing in the public eye, though, you're going to be called out for it. So I'm trying to help Dante Thornton. Dante, you have NFL talent at receiver. If you have the mentality Dave and I had in high school or in college, you will regret it when you hit your 30s.
Well, the last 2 years, I was pretty good.
I didn't have it throughout my college career. I regret it to this day. Dante, I'm telling you, you have NFL potential. You will regret it way worse than I regret it if you don't do it, because you're talking about millions and millions of dollars on the table right
True. Here's the thing, too, with Dante Thornton. If he shows up physically immature, you can't put him wide out. You have to put him at slot. You don't have an option, because Brew McCoy, part of the thing that's so amazing about him and what he brought to this team is he's blocking 10 yards down the field, 20 yards down the field on a screen pass. I mean, he's the opposite, frankly. He is very old / mature, and he showed up to Tennessee like that. So let's get to what down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
All right, 4th down. So Coop says it's 4th down. Your top 2 are these: Aaron Beasley, Omari Thomas. I think that's a very savvy pick for those 2. I really do, because I think Beasley and Thomas will lead Tennessee's defense to either a win or not. And I think this is going to be a defensive game. I haven't made my pick yet, but I think it's a very, very astute choice by you to have 2 defenders at the top 2, despite the fact that I gave you a hard time about Cooper.
Yeah. Wait, let's break down Dave's. Okay, so I was wrong for not having Joe Milton at 1. Then I was wrong for not having Cooper Mays at 1. And now it's very astute for me to have 2 defenders at the top 2.
They're 1A. I told you. They're 1A, 1B.
Dave's understanding of math is like football IQ. Dave, as we did our segment yesterday, Dave has football IQ, guys.
By the way, football IQ is coming back every Tuesday. John Adams loved it. And it killed it on YouTube as well. So we're just going to call out dumb coaching moves. But okay, so of the two, I would. Who will have the bigger impact? Let's make that fourth down. I'll say Beasley has the bigger impact on the stat sheet, but Omari Thomas taking up 2 and 3 blockers at times will have as much of an impact, albeit a little bit more quiet.
Yes, I think Omari Thomas will have the bigger impact. That's why I had him number 1. And so let me break down why these two are top 2. We obviously spoke about Texas A&M on Monday, and Chase Basantis, who was Texas A&M's right tackle, as was mentioned on the show, had a 17.1 PFF grade. Dave, if you have anything below 60, it's considered bad. Okay, PFF grades are like grades on a test. So imagine getting a 17 on a test. That's horrible. Now, that's at right tackle. The reason I didn't have James Pierce, Tyler Barron, or any of those guys is, as you know, they usually line their edge rushers up against the left tackle. Tennessee does. They run on the right side like those hybrid, smaller defensive tackles that could play in. That's where Dominic Bailey lines up typically. So the ends don't usually get a lot of sacks going up against the right tackle. Who does get a lot of sacks and makes plays are the linebackers on pressure packages, which is typically Aaron Beasley. So against a horrendous pass blocking on the right side, you'll see Dominic Bailey command some attention because of that. And Aaron Beasley should just be able to roll through and just make play after play. The reason Omari Thomas was number 1 is this is about stopping the run and getting the push necessary for the whole unit. So Basantis was the worst blocker. But the center for Texas A&M, Bryce Foster, had a 31.2 PFF grade last week, which is still historically bad. And the guards had a 40 and a 55 PFF grade. So Omari Thomas should be able to blow up that line all night. And he had a sack last week. So I think Omari Thomas is going to – you're right. Aaron Beasley gets the stats. Omari Thomas is more important, though, overall, in my opinion. But they'll be the reason. They need to – Cooper Mays and Joe Milton, it's about doing what needs to be done. These guys have massive skill, and it's taking advantage of what they're already great at and where Texas A&M should be weak at.
I love you guys. Papa J saying, Caleb, there's no pleasing a hooker. I guess that's true because it's like a job for them. So
yeah, the
he's
job
always referring to me. Oh, okay. So no matter how hard you go or how dedicated you are, I should say, there's no pleasing a hooker. So bad choice of word.
The beautiful thing about hookers, what you're paying for is none of them will ever put you at number 1, though.
None of them.
You're not paying.
Oh my gosh! So you're not there. I thought that
you're not paying for the enjoyment. You're paying for them to leave. That's what the cost is.
Yeah, that's probably true. And no commitment.